Mr. Agnew now, please.
Well, I think it's rather appropriate following Mr. Flanagan and the remark he made about farmers are tearing their hair out with frustration at these schemes. I have been involved in these schemes and you can see my hairline as a result. But I couldn't help noticing on the pie chart that Mr. Wojciechowski produced that the UK's share of that seems disproportionately small, and maybe there's a reason for that. Perhaps it's logical, I just don't know, but I wouldn't mind an explanation. What really puzzles me from this report is the amount of unspent money. Now, this is a quarter of the entire EU budget, so it says at the front of the report, and half of that apparently is not being spent, or very roughly. And yet we hear that overall the EU is greatly exceeding its budget, resulting in this phrase reste a liquider, where they apparently keep spending next year's money for this year's expenditure. So if the agricultural side of that is actually underspending, there must be some colossal overspending elsewhere in the EU budget, unless I've got this wrong. But this is what really surprised me from looking at this. And finally, as I said, I've been involved in these schemes, and they are complex. But one thing you can't help noticing is that there are facilitators and administrators who are drawing salaries. And I was hoping that from the Court of Auditors might be able to actually give a proportion of this. As to, we have these young university graduates there who all get to help the farmers and they're taking a salary. And I wonder what proportion of this is soaked up in administration. Thank you.
Thank you, meneer Agnew.
Thank you, Mr. Agnew. If there's any connection between your hairline and the complexity of the rules, I'm sure that applies to the Commission too. Mr. Miluchev seems to have a similar hairline to yourself.
The question of UK, it's rather for my colleagues of DG Budge, but as far as the common agricultural policy is concerned, Mr. Wojciechowski started with the fact that we have 3/4 of our spending in the first pillar. So in the first pillar, you don't have these low percentages. You have bigger percentages because it is per year spending. So the common agricultural policy is much better represented in the spending. The rural development, I will say once again, we are not worried about the situation that is now with 25% on average. Of course, we have question marks here and there in some regions and in some member states, and we are working together with them in our annual review meetings, monitoring committees, to spend much faster the money and to spend it better. But we are not worried with the levels, and we don't see for the moment any big danger of decommitment.
Mr. Agnew asked about UK's participation, which is at 5% of the totality. But UK's participation or share is clearly delineated or described in the annex to the relevant regulation. So each country has a share that was given to such a country. Poland, for instance, moved a number of funds from the second pillar to the first pillar, so such transfers are possible and have been made.
Mr. Agnew, you'd like to take the floor?
Original question, if the agricultural rural development budget is being underspent, and yet the budget overall appears to be overspent, resulting in the reste a liquider problem, which DG is taking up all this extra money? Now, I appreciate that the member from the Commission is only dealing with agriculture, and he may not know what's going on elsewhere. So that might be the answer, but I wouldn't mind hearing it from his lips, because it wasn't actually answered.
Meneer Miluchev.
Mr. Miluchev.
I take the commitment, I take the question, and we'll come back to my colleagues, and we are going to reply to you. Unfortunately, I'm not competent enough to know this overall situation with the rest of liquide and everything at the level of the Commission. But I take the question with my colleagues, and we are going to come back to you. Thank you.
Perfect. Meneer